Parliament's Communications Portfolio Committee has now tabled the names of persons who it believes will serve on the SABC as board members. The 12 nominations were announced yesterday after prolonged delays. So let's hone in to the recommended names with Professor Justine Limpitlaw. She's the chairperson of the legal subcommittee of the SOS Coalition. That's a public broadcasting network that campaigns for democratic media. Justine joining us via our video link this morning. And it's great to have you on the program once again, Prof. Thanks very much indeed for making time. There's so much being said around the individuals who've been nominated to be part of this board, but broadly speaking, is this a board you would back?
Broadly speaking, yes. I was pleasantly surprised, I have to say, at the shortlisted names. There are a couple that have given us cause for concern. But generally speaking, all of the parties steered clear of recommending people that were really problematic, who had huge scandals next to their names.
Yeah.
And I thought that it was clear that all of the parties recognized the need for a functional board of professional people and with people who are able to take the SABC forward. I think all parties have had enough of the scandals, and so I'm pleased, generally speaking, with the makeup of the board, with some exceptions.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was hoping we'd go. I mean, even from your first response, I could hear that there is room for a but. So tell us where your concerns are.
So, one of the names that comes up, Mr. Mahuba.
Yeah.
I think it's problematic when you have an organization like the SABC board that is meant to give direction to the public broadcaster. There's a real problem with his submission of a degree to the University of Limpopo, where the university has refused to award him a degree over concerns that it was plagiarized or that someone else wrote it. And the High Court backed the university in that. And I just think that that kind of conduct, personal conduct, ought to render you unfit to serve on the national public broadcaster, which is supposed to uphold the values of truth and of accuracy, and so I think that that's a problem. And then another name that we have concerns about is Nomvuyiso Bachi, and this is a very difficult one because anyone who knows Nomvuyiso knows that she's extremely knowledgeable about the area. I would say one of the most knowledgeable people on the board. Her personal conduct is exemplary. She was a former chairperson of ICASA. She's exceptionally well placed, and we would very much like to see her on the board. In fact, we would like to see her as chairperson on the board ordinarily. But the problem is that she is also the CEO of the telecommunications operators grouping and forum. And the problem with that is that as the SABC moves into the digital age, particularly around issues of the analog switch-off date and which operators to do business with their new SABC Plus platform, we are concerned that there's an obvious conflict there.
Yeah,
absolutely. There's a conflict between public broadcasting and the telcos. Even if it's not actual, it certainly is perceived. Now, I know Ms. Bachi, she will absolutely not participate in board meetings, for example, if anything, if there is any issue around the telcos, and the Act makes provision for this. It does say that if you do have a conflict, then you just don't participate in that discussion. But we think that these are going to be issues that the board is going to be dealing with on a continual basis, and to not have her be able to participate in those discussions because of her job, her day job, is a worry for us. We would much rather that Parliament had said, we'd really like to have you on the board, but it's subject to you standing down from this position while you are on the board.
Interesting. Speaking about complex dynamics, understandably, and perhaps as many would have expected, there's a lot being said around Patriso Makopeni being involved as part of those who are going to be on the board, right? As a former head of SABC News, the DA, in backing her yesterday, said her knowledge around how to run the public broadcaster is encyclopedic, and many people might agree with that. But it shouldn't be lost to us how she actually lost her job there, right? And the fact that she might very well have to interact with some of those people if she were to be on this board in one way or the other.
Well, that's a very interesting thing. My own view is that in many respects, Patriso was an outstanding news editor, and I've said this on the record before. The SABC board, when looking at the conduct of its own board chair in the alleged political interference, found that there was no political interference on the part of the former SABC board chair, Mr. Makatini, but it didn't look into the conduct of the CEO. That's obviously for the SABC's HR and employment relations manager to do, but she was, she was fired before that could happen, and that firing then was the subject of a secret because the SABC refused to release the terms of the settlement that was reached between the SABC and Ms. Magopeni. And when you say they're going to have to interact, they're absolutely going to. Mr. Makake, who is the CEO, sits on the board as an executive director.
Right.
So that might well be uncomfortable, but perhaps not a bad thing. I think there's certainly questions around that, but it is what it is, and the SABC reached a settlement, and no fault was found, as I understand it, on either side. Well, certainly they reached a settlement. So I think it's, that's just going to have to, everyone at the SABC is going to have to live with that.
Yeah.
And her knowledge of news and of the policies is, I would agree with that. I think it's second to none of everyone that's on the board in terms of the intimate details of the SABC.
Right. In
knowledge of it.
Yeah, the DA being quoted as saying that she was their top scoring candidate, so to speak. But this board, of course, once everything has been finalized and it's been approved, has its work cut out for it. I mean, there's already been so many delays. They missed out on a meeting with Scopa, I think it was just a few days ago, where several things were meant to be discussed, including that SIU investigation looking at irregular expenditure amounting to around 2.9 billion rand. That's just one of the many issues that this board is going to have to get down to doing. The obvious question is around whether or not we imagine any other hurdle that might prevent this board from being able to carry out its duties to finally turn this SOE around.
So I have to say, I actually think that the previous board did a really good job in starting to turn the SABC around. Where we are now, 5 years after that previous board was appointed, to where we were in 2017, it's a different place at the SABC. There's much more stability, and the SIU investigations are all around that previous time. It's not like these are all new misspending and corruption and the problems with that. Those are legacy issues. So I think there's been a good, and I think they're working off a good. I think the new board coming in is working off a fairly solid base. What I think is outrageous, can I say, is the process that was embarked on to have a security vetting of all of the interviewed shortlisted candidates, not even of the recommended candidates, when what the National Strategic Intelligence Act requires is security vetting of people that are going to be dealing with classified information. It's just absurd to have that, without any concerns that someone's acting, as a foreign intelligence agent or something, to have that of SABC directors. The SABC is the public broadcaster. Its role is to broadcast information to the public. It doesn't deal in classified information. The security vetting should never have been insisted on. This is what we're seeing Parliament doing, I think, is trying to pass the buck for decisions that have been made to previous boards and employees that have gone wrong by somehow saying, oh, well, we've done the security vetting. The security vetting is only for people that are involved in dealing in classified information. I think Parliament's completely wrong on this, and it's causing chaos for public appointments. And I'm hoping that, there needs to be a rethink about this. It should never have happened.
Professor Justine Limpitlaw, always great getting your insights on issues, especially around what's taking place at the SABC. Really do appreciate your time this morning. Professor Limpitlaw is the chairperson of the Subcommittee on Legal Affairs with the SOS Coalition. Once again, thanks very much indeed for your time.